I was racing at the Olympics, won an Elite World Cup, professional cross-country racer. And then in 2018, when they announced e-mountain bike World Champs, I was just like, UCI, what the fuck?
Let's talk about Verbier.
The riding here is amazing.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah. Verbier is an amazing place to ride, even though I'm never riding in the bike park.
You've never ridden a de-restricted e-bike?
No.
Wow. Downhill mountain biking has an incredible image. Do you think that e-bikes have a bit of an identity crisis?
I think e-bikes are just growing up now. Maybe it's a midlife crisis, I don't know.
Nathalie Schneitter, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. And thank you for joining me at the Hotel de Verbier. And also, another thank you for allowing me to ride with you today at the Bosch eMTB Challenge. We got a bit wet, didn't we?
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Do you enjoy doing events like that? Because that's more of an enduro style of event to perhaps what you're used to.
Yeah, that's correct. I really enjoy this particular event because it was yesterday, like super big stages. Each stage was over 20 minutes and it was like high alpine riding, pure single track, but really testing our limits. And today the Bosch eMTB Challenge, it's just a fun event where you can hang out with friends and race, but also have a good time.
Yeah.
So for me, I come here to the Verbier e-bike festival since it's running, which means since 2019.
Okay.
And I've enjoyed it every year, even though the race format has changed over the years. They made it a little bit more approachable for most people.
You're going to say beginners then, weren't you?
No, it's just like I think the first year they had the E-Tour du Mont Blanc. We rode across like around Mont Blanc in 3 days. It was 16,000 meters of climbing and descending.
Wow.
In 3 days. We used 4 batteries a day. Well, back then the batteries were still a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
But that was a format that I think was too crazy for most. It was like a proper survival camp. And I think the format they are having now with like one really big day and then a second day, which is more kind of for everybody. Makes it more approachable.
That style of events that there was here previously, you would previously ride that in pairs, is that correct?
That's correct. And that was mainly due to safety reasons because it was like super far from civilization mainly. So the reason they did it in pairs was just that if you crash or something bad happens to you, you always have someone with you who could call emergency.
Did that ever happen?
Not to me.
Stay on your bike.
Well, crashes do happen. I think it was 3 years ago. I cracked a few ribs, went over the bars and had a battery in my backpack. Yeah. I'm very happy that we don't have to do this anymore. I hate a heavy battery in my backpack and I think it's pretty dangerous. But 3 years ago, that was still the case. I went over the bar and then the battery hit me from behind and I cracked a few ribs. So. But that was not like that's an injury where you can still kind of keep going. It's a bit painful and not pleasant, but it doesn't. Yeah.
Carrying batteries on your backpack to me is not a good thing. Like that is a recipe for disaster.
And it's no fun.
No, definitely not.
It kills the fun.
Yeah. I can imagine.
And mountain biking or e-mountain biking is supposed to be fun.
We have skipped over one very important part of my introduction for you, and that is that you are a 2-time world champion. Explain what you are 2-time world champion in and tell me about the event and the format.
So in 2018, the UCI, which is the World Cycling Federation, announced that the year later they're going to host the e-cross country world championships. And I got intrigued and decided to give it a go.
That's not what you told me before. No, hang on. So you came from cross country and you looked at e-bikes and you thought, that's not for me.
Yeah, I raced cross country for 16, 17 years. I was racing at the Olympics, won an Elite World Cup. So I was, just like professional cross country racer. touring the World Cups. And then I retired after 2016. I turned 30, didn't qualify for the Olympics in Rio, and thought it's time to do something else. And then in 2018, when they announced e-mountain bike or e-cross country World Champs, I was just like, UCI, what the fuck? Like e-bike racing, couldn't imagine that it's cool and that e-bike racing is even a thing and that it should exist. And for sure, I didn't believe it's for me. But then I also really strongly believe that we should not judge things that we have never tried.
Yeah. But you said that you were kind of afraid to tell your friends that that's what you were thinking of doing.
So I went to a first race and was like, I was hooked. It was so much fun, and I realized there is so much to learn. I felt like a junior. Yeah. And that's actually the moment where I decided that I want to do World Champs because somebody has to win it. And at the time I was like, everybody has a shot, and why not me? But then, I didn't really have e-bike riders in my... nobody around me.
No.
Like there was just e-bike was in 2019, still something for old people. So I was a little bit afraid to tell my friends, and I also want to be cool. And it was just like I only told them very, very last minute that I'm going to Worlds. Yeah. And then
what was their reaction?
I think they thought it's funny, and well, basically they said, okay, it's weird, but we like you anyway.
We'll accept you as anyway. Yeah.
Well, I think, it's with I think my friends or the friends coming out of the cycling bubble, they're used to me having like weird ideas or trying things. Like I wrote a dropper C post in cross country when dropper C post in cross country was not a thing. And I've always been very interested in kind of pushing things a little bit. So for me, just trying new things and being open and curious. Yeah. Is something that is important to me, and I think it has shown in my cycling as well. So racing e-bikes very early, I think it kind of fits the picture.
So what led to you becoming world champion?
I think the most important was to realize that it's another sport. So if I ride my e-bike the way I have ridden my cross-country bike, it's not a recipe to do well. So I had to learn how to ride an e-bike well, which that's my personal opinion. But what the e-bike can do better than any other bike is climbing very technical terrain. Yeah. And with an e-bike, I can climb things that all my life I've only been riding downhill. Yeah. So I've started to ride like all my home trails backwards and realized that I need to lower my saddle a lot to have like good back wheel traction. And that I just have to change or adapt my riding style. It's also like every drive unit has a cadence where it works most efficient. So I started to ride intervals, like even on my road bike, with the cadence that my e-bike works best with. So it's kind of for me, e-bike racing is kind of a team sport. It's you and your bike, and together you try to get the most out of it. So it's clear that I need to adapt my riding style to get the best out of my bike. And especially riding uphill with a low saddle, it looks kind of stupid, but it's very efficient.
Isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of criticism in the past for riding uphill with my seat down.
And I think what most people don't realize is how hard it is. Like you need so many muscles. Yeah. Like it's really tiring. And it's just a lot of... kind of new movements that you have to learn. Yeah. And it needs a fresh and open mind to to be okay with leaving 16 years of experience in cross country behind and be open to all those new techniques.
It's interesting that you mentioned cadence as well, because I actually found that for me, riding a road bike and riding an e-bike can be quite similar in terms of the pedaling style.
I think we've seen at races like the Tour de France that souplesse or like high cadence riding uphill is it's a very important thing to do, and that's 100% the same on an e-bike.
Yeah.
You need and riding a high cadence off-road, it's not easy.
It's not.
If you watch most people riding, like they could get out of the bikes a lot more if they would just shift a gear or two.
And but it just feels unnatural for most people, especially mountain bikers. I think most people are used to just grinding. And and that's just muscle your way up the hill. But it's like, let the motor do the work. Like all it takes is you have to spin your legs, basically.
Yeah.
XC racing on an e-bike is more commonly done on a long travel bike now. Is that right?
That's right.
Which seems crazy. And I think from the outside, it looks kind of crazy too.
So I ride 160 millimeters in front, 150 in the rear.
Okay.
It's the bike I ride is a track rail. It comes with a bigger fork, but due to weight and a little bit different geometry with the lower fork, I decided for e-cross country it's a better choice to go a little bit lower. But really, like to climb uphill, we need a lot of back wheel traction and like a good tire and suspension in the back helps a lot. And then going downhill, our cross country courses are actually quite crazy. So it's like crazy uphills and crazy downhills, and I think we've all tried to go with less travel.
Yeah.
But it just didn't work really well. E-bikes are heavy, even though we try to tune them down as much as possible.
Yeah.
And it may look funny, like people in Lycra on big travel bikes, but it's fun.
I know, actually, let's talk about your bike. So the track rail that you ride, you were telling me earlier that you've done quite a lot of work on it to get the weight down. So what methods have you used to reduce the weight of the bike, and roughly where are you at now in terms of the overall weight?
I think it's important to understand that the e-cross country race or cross country in general, we do laps, like same lap 5, 6, 7 times, and one lap is maybe 4Ks, and we're allowed to train on it, which means it's a 4-kilometer loop, which I know every route, every stone, and then it makes risk management a little bit easier than if you would race a, let's say, high alpine enduro race, where a lot of things get thrown at you that you don't know that it's coming.
Well, that's how I felt today.
In cross country, that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I can also, with material, I can take more risks. So instead of enduro or a e-bike wheel, I ride a very light cross-country wheel. Same with tires.
Yeah.
Obviously, I need volume, but then still, when it comes to sidewalls, and I mostly opt for lighter tires, because if you save 200 grams on a tire, it's rotating mass. It just adds up. Yeah. So wheels and tires, super easy way to save weight, but it's not, as I said, if you just go for big days in the mountain, I would not do that. It's just for that type of racing that it's a good thing to do. Then I'm racing a smaller battery, 625, which is for my body weight enough to go 1 hour full gas.
Okay.
That way I save more than a kilo. What else did we do? We took the lock out.
Yeah.
So
I wish everybody would do that.
We took the lock out so I can mount my battery with an Allen key. Lighter stem.
You've got an integrated bar and stem?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
and then light saddle, cross-country pedals, and a few things out of the 3D printer.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of aluminium.
Okay.
But again, it's easier destroyed. So I normally only mount it for the race. I do training with the heavy things, and then go to the light stuff just for racing.
Do you roughly know the total weight of the bike?
It's about 20 kilos.
Wow. So it shows you what is possible. Like, obviously you do compromise perhaps the strength of the overall bike, but yeah, it's interesting. You can get a full power bike down to that 20 kilo sort of weight. Yeah.
For the race here in Verbier, obviously I did not opt to ride this bike because I needed a bigger battery and more like a bike that can handle a little bit more. So
the Trek Rail runs on a Bosch CX race motor. You've been quite heavily involved as well in the development of the software of that motor, is that right?
That's correct.
Tell me about that development process, because I think Bosch have been well known for being the leader in terms of the performance of a motor for quite a long time, and now we're starting to see other manufacturers catch up. So what did you do that got you ahead of all these other manufacturers initially?
Well, I think Bosch e-bike systems, they have a good philosophy of like pushing things and making progress and making the product better.
Yeah.
But it's never compromising safety or durability or anything like that. So the drive unit that I ride now, or actually even the old one, it could potentially, I think, handle a lot more power, but power is nothing without control.
Sure.
That's what we kept saying about, I don't know, the last 4 or 5 years, or since I started e-bike racing. You don't want more power, or actually you do want more power, but only when you can handle it. If your bike rides like a wild horse that you cannot control, it's not going to be fast. It's maybe fast if you ride up an asphalt road, but we ride techie single track. And if you kind of have like a big step up and you lift your front wheel and the drive unit gives you so much power that you fall backwards, that's not a good way to go.
Okay, so today I was riding with a Bosch race motor, and I had this one moment where I came over a crest, and then just as I came over the top, I think there were some rocks there, I put a pedal in, and then I dropped down the other side, and it turned immediately sharp left.
Yeah.
And I felt the motor like push the bike away from me, and I had this moment of like, oh shit, I wasn't prepared for that.
So what the Bosch does is like in the serial, like common normal software, in the e-mountain bike mode, you have something called extended boost, which means when you push the pedal, the bike goes up to 2.5 meters, which helps you go over obstacles.
Wow.
The turbo mode doesn't do that, but the race mode does.
Okay.
So that's exactly what you've been just talking about. You probably went over that thing, pushed a little bit on the pedal. Yeah. It kept on going up to those 2.5 meters, but you already had a turn, so you had to brake down.
Yeah.
And for racing, that means, or when I ride my e-bike, I always have my one finger on the rear brake.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if you ever been go-karting. When you go go-kart into a corner, like it's quite efficient when you push the gas and brake at the same time. And that's exactly how I ride my e-bike. So you always want the engine to keep working, to keep momentum. Yeah. So you, even though you may want to go slower, you keep pushing the pedals, but you brake at the same time.
I think many people who have been riding e-bikes a long time, they understand that process, especially on a technical climb where you're pedaling and you're also dabbing the brakes whilst you're pedaling to kind of manage that slip in the rear wheel. And it's something that I've become completely used to. But when I used to guide with e-bikes and I'd put people on them that have never ridden before, it was like a completely alien thing for them. And the minute they got into anything technical, they're just spinning out quickly. And I'd have to keep reminding myself that Yeah, that technique where you just kind of hover over the brake. It's amazing how effective that is when you're climbing. It's a completely different style, isn't it?
And yeah, if you imagine going like switchbacks, tight switchbacks uphill, so you go into the switchback with kind of low speed.
Yeah.
So, but even though you go low speed, you want your drive unit to work, because if it stops working, it breaks momentum.
Yeah.
And that's not you need to do the momentum to kind of get around the corner.
Yeah.
But you don't need the speed. So it's really, really crucial to have the rear brake as a tool going uphill.
Does it concern you that other manufacturers are starting to really push the limits of the regulations and now perhaps developing motors that are competing and in some cases maybe even beating the Bosch system?
I think it's really good to have competition. Like that's, for me as an athlete, I want other athletes to be on the same level so we can push each other to be better.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be in sports. And I think that's also how it should be in the industry. But at the same time, I think it's really important to have bike checks, to have clear rules, what's allowed and what's not allowed, and that somebody is checking if everybody is playing with what it's allowed.
And how much scrutineering actually happens? Like how do they keep check?
So for e-cross country races, there are bike checks before and after every race. So the top 5 gets also tested after the race. And I see it a little bit like a doping control for athletes. It's just your bike also goes to anti-doping to make sure it's not chipped or anything. And there's a lot you could do, I guess, but I'm very confident that the big players like Bosch, Specialized, and Shimano, I would say that's the big threes, that they are very aware of their responsibility. And I personally, I can only talk about Bosch because that's the company I work with. Yep. And they have a very, very big, they are very aware of their responsibility they have. And that's something I also really appreciate.
The other thing I want to talk about with you is not about the bike itself, but you and what's required in order to race at the top level in e-bikes. Because you train a lot, you train on road bikes and obviously XC, and we've spoke previously about how much you ride bikes that aren't just e-bikes. So tell me about the sort of work that you do both off the bike and also when you're training on a bike.
So I would say if you would count my training in hours, I ride a lot more acoustic bikes than e-bikes. Yeah. If you count my training in the amount of times I ride a bike, it's probably, I would say at least half of my rides are e-bike rides, but they're mostly shorter rides. So I use my road bike or my gravel bike for endurance training, just long base rides, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 hours. I love my cross-country bike to go really hard or do intervals. Yeah. And then I use my e-bike mostly for shorter rides, 1 hour, 1.5, when I want, when I want to have fun. Yeah. E-biking, my e-bike is really, for me, it's a fun toy. And obviously, I think the training is similar to a cross-country rider. I just do base trainings, intervals. Maybe the intervals are a little bit shorter than I did back in the days. But then it's also important that I have upper body strength to be able to hold my handlebar and move the heavy bike in the corners, or especially also going uphill. I used to see upper body strength something that I mostly need downhill, but with an e-bike going up techy terrain, core stability is very, very important. Oh yeah. So Yeah, and then obviously also skills training on my e-bike. Like when you don't ride the bike you race with regularly, you get a bit rusty.
And how's your sort of trials and climbing ability?
That it's funny because even when I was racing cross country, climbing technical terrain, it was just my most favorite thing to do because it keeps my mind busy. I don't feel my legs or the burning legs and burning lungs so much when my brain has something else to think about. So that I've always loved climbing single track and like a good challenge, uphill challenge.
Yeah.
But with my e-bike, it just came to a completely different level. And I must say, like when I ride my e-bike, I like uphill challenges almost more than downhill challenges. So I think my uphill skills are fairly good.
Today I actually felt the same. Like I really enjoyed the undulating stages and the ones that did have climbing sections in them. And the minute that I see there's a no foot down section, I'm like, right, here we go. Like I can do this. And those are the bits I really enjoyed probably the most. Probably because my brakes are the wrong way around for me. So I was terrified on any of the descents. But it does bring in that kind of that other element of riding a bike. It makes the climbs fun.
Yes, it makes the climbing fun, but it doesn't make it less hard.
No.
As soon as you climb single track, your heart rate goes up.
Yeah.
And it's all out. And I think the hardest sessions I do in training are e-bike sessions because when you climb, you cannot go easy. When you climb single track, at least.
Sure.
And it pushes my limits and going hard and fun.
That Bosch slogan that you said earlier, that power is nothing without control. Many of the manufacturers seem to have found themselves at that sweet spot of 85 Newton meters. Why do you think that is, and how comes that tends to be the default torque of most motors?
Well, I'm not an engineer, so it's but I do believe that it's just like that sweet spot where you have a lot of power, which you can still control.
Not in my case today. I definitely lost control.
Yeah, and I a lot of power where that the riders can still control, and it's also safe.
Yeah.
Like I can imagine that if you test e-mountain bike just on a car park, more power would feel amazing.
Sure.
And it maybe also works for marketing, but off-road, good luck with it.
What do you think about the limiter or the limit speed in Europe? Because I've actually got a bike at the moment that's got the US sort of restriction on it, which is 5 miles per hour faster, I think, maybe. But yeah, I've noticed that I really enjoy riding that bike because the motor can assist me that bit more. Do you find that you're pedaling above the limiter when you're racing quite often?
If the course is well designed, no. Because if a course is well designed, that the sections where you can push over 25 should be very, very few.
Okay.
But personally, it's in my favor if those parts are pretty frequent because I have quite a bit of power in my legs, and I'm one of the riders who can push over that 25 kilometers per hour mark. So if we have sections in the race that we have to do that, it's normally in my favor. But I think courses or races should be designed that it doesn't happen very often. And on a 4 kilometer loop, that's also realistic that it doesn't happen too often. In an enduro race or in a format like we had here,
yes.
Obviously it's much harder because it's just hiking trails and whatever tracks there is on the mountains. I have never ridden a bike off-road that is going faster, but I could imagine that it's a lot of fun. Yeah. But I also don't see it happening in Europe.
You've never ridden a de-restricted e-bike?
No.
Wow.
I have a S pedelec or a speed pedelec to ride on road. In Switzerland, the regulations are pretty a bit less restrictive than in the rest of Europe. So
Yeah.
we're allowed to ride on the road and on the bike path, and it's just a super fast way to get from A to B to do your groceries. So yes, I do have a bike that goes up to 45, but we're not allowed to ride in the forest with.
The only time that I've found it's useful to have a de-restricted e-bike is if you're hitting big jumps, and to get that extra speed to pedal into a jump it's really nice to have. But yeah, like you say, in everyday use, like, do you need that?
Yeah, and I think it's my biggest concern or my biggest wish and hope is that e-bikes keep being treated as bicycles.
Yeah,
And that we are allowed to ride in the forest with them on trails.
totally.
And I think if we, or at least in Switzerland, if this is the main goal, I don't see it happening that we get, that we will be ever allowed to go faster than 25 k's an hour.
E-Enduro, let's talk about that a little bit, because before when we spoke, you said that you love the adventure aspect of E-Enduro, and today was a great example actually of the eMTB challenge. There was an element of kind of orienteering and trying to find the markers where we had to scan our tags, and then you have the race stages as well in the middle of it. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts when it comes to e-bike enduro.
As I said, for me, the e-bike is a climbing machine. So an enduro is a downhill orientated race format.
Sure.
So e-enduro should, compared to traditional enduro, in my opinion, have bigger aspects of going uphill.
Yeah.
And what the World Series is doing at the moment is just those uphill stages. And I know that a lot of people ride enduro mostly to go downhill, but I think the uphill aspect of should be more prominent in those races.
Yes.
And I'm an uphill lover. So but still I think really like good uphill challenges when your heart rate is already high, maybe mid stage, stuff like that. That's just something that is I think should be part of e-enduro. We had yesterday 4 stages of 20-25 minutes, and
Wow.
there was really like techie uphill stuff in the middle of it when you're already like kind of done. And it's just I think that should be part of e-enduro.
Okay. Yeah. And that's interesting, actually. We should touch on the format side of it. Not that we've got any control over it, but the e-enduro has received, and the enduro itself has received quite a lot of criticism over making it a sport that's not that great for spectators. And surely there are things that can be done to make it more of a spectator sport. Like at the moment, it feels like the minute that all the riders leave the pits, you don't see them for the rest of the day. And other than the special stage where you've got that climb, that's kind of the only time where it's like really a spectator sport.
Yeah, that's probably true. And I feel like what has been done from federations, race organizers, is just copy paste from what's been around from acoustic bikes. Okay, we do the same race format for e-bikes, and I feel like e-bike racing deserve a race format that is kind of made for e-bikes. But I also believe that a sport is then successful or can survive over years and stay successful if it's easy to watch. And enduro is a sport that most mountain bikers love to do.
Yeah.
But when you watch a race, it should be downhill and cross country is just so much easier to cover on TV.
Yeah.
And then also, watch at home from your couch.
I know.
And I think for e-enduro, they should come up, or for e-bike racing, they should come up with something that is easier to stream.
Yeah, I think we said that before when we were speaking off camera, that if you had a more extreme version of the cross country that had for the E side of the sport, if you have those really extreme climbs and then more extreme descents as well, like that, surely that can be a good thing. Like people would love to watch that.
Yeah, I mean, you also need the athletes for it, but I'm really sure if the courses are exciting, you will have athletes that will love to race it.
I mean, we're already seeing the XC get pretty extreme. You see river gaps and real techie sections now that they're riding. So surely it wouldn't take that much to make it more extreme.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So here's the other thing, right? Today, I managed to work out the numbers when I got back. 25 female entries of the eMTB challenge out of a total of 120 people. How do we get more women involved in e-biking and also in e-racing?
I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask because...
Are you seeing more women riding now? I
see in Switzerland, like all over the country, a lot of girls on road and gravel bikes.
Yeah.
I also see more on mountain bikes, but compared to road and gravel, it's less for sure. Okay. And what I also see is that women are looking for kind of groups with other women, like girls' camps or whatever. Whatever there is, where like groups they can join and where they feel like they're in a safe environment or where nobody pushes them too much. It looks like that's something that women look for, but I'm not really one of them because I love to ride with the boys at home and that they push me to my limits. And that has always been the case, but I guess that's also how I became someone that races globally.
Yeah.
And but I've been coaching at a few like girls' camps, and it's really cool to see how it empowers them, gives them confidence, and kind of also the ability to connect with others that have about the same level.
Yeah.
Maybe that has to be done more with e-bikes too. I don't know if there is like girls' camps just especially for e-bikes or not. I don't know.
I can't count the number of times that I've met men riding their e-bikes and I say, how did you get into e-biking? And they said, well, I thought I'd get an e-bike for my wife. And then I couldn't keep up with her. And so then I bought an e-bike. So we ended up with two. And that seems to be, you could tell that story 100 times over. And that is often the way that many men get into e-bikes. So yeah, maybe women are doing their thing to get more people into it.
But how do we get women racing e-bikes? I don't know. I think like getting women into racing is a difficult thing itself. It doesn't matter the discipline.
Okay, here's an idea. Events like today, which are more relaxed, they're not really treated as a race. It's more just an adventure. Maybe that's the answer. We need to see more events that are just more about riding together, and with the fact that there are some time sections in it, and that encourages you to ride harder.
Or the answer is that you could join a race like today with no timing. So you do it once with no timing and then realize that it was quite okay. And when you come for the second time, you choose the timing option.
It's a good idea. I like that.
Well, again, I cannot personally relate, but I know a lot of people that get kind of intimidated when they have a start number and a timing chip. And
when I got it today.
Yeah, for me that's something is like, oh, now I'm in like different mode. I'm in race pony mode, and I love it. But apparently, I mean, I've done it since I'm 13 years old. But if you get into this in your 30s, I guess it can be very intimidating.
Yeah. And I think here is a really good example of a race that many people could do, because the riding is not that difficult, but it's really enjoyable. And I think that there needs to be this realization that people can still race without needing to be incredible on a bike.
In Switzerland, we also have a few events where you have to kind of collect trails.
Okay.
So instead of having timing, it's like the person who has collected a certain amount of trails, the fastest. So you can also choose the order of the trails, and if you don't care, you just have a good day on the bike.
Okay.
And I think that's something. It's not so. It doesn't feel so serious.
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about Verbier. Verbier is pretty cool, isn't it?
The riding here is amazing.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
I actually came here many years ago, and we were riding Port de Soleil, and we were in that kind of quite comfortable environment where you've got loads of blues and loads of greens and reds and all the sort of different grades of trail on the same hill. And then we came here in the van, and we went into the bike park, and then Jen was terrified. she was scared of every trail. I think there was only one that she was really happy riding. And I think we only lasted 2 days here because we had no idea of what else was to offer if you left the bike park.
Yeah, it's funny because the bike park here is pretty famous, I would say, and very well built. But I'm also not a big bike park person. I like natural trails.
Yeah.
And also for me, Verbier is an amazing place to ride, even though I'm never riding in the bike park because there's so many trails on both sides of the valley. So where we went to today on the Golden Mille side, it's I think that's my favorite trail in the world. Yeah. It's endless, and it's I years back when I rode it the first time with Tracy Mosley, I think it was in 2012, and I was like, oh my god, this is so amazing. Yeah. And now with my e-bike, it's even more amazing because you can connect it with really techy uphill riding. Sure. And then have this amazing descent. So for me, with an e-bike, the Verbier got even better.
I agree. I mean, obviously it's the e-bike festival, but I've seen more e-bikes here than I think I've seen for the whole year outside of Verbier.
And what I really like about the festival in particular is that they also have this kind of routes where it's just like discovery routes. So it's signed discovery routes in blue, red and black. Right. So you can just follow an arrow and have a good time. And they also do these gourmet tours. So while I was racing, I did bring my parents. They're both like over 70, and they did the Blue Sportive Gourmet Tour with 4 food stops, and they just had an amazing time.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that needs to happen in mountain biking and e-biking, because e-bikes are different things to many people. Not everyone's racing on them. Some people just want to have a nice time. That's probably the majority of people that buy e-bikes. They just want to go out and enjoy themselves. And more often than not, we've been out in the Alps for the last couple of months now. Most of our rides, we just want to go out and explore, like especially from where we are in Morzine, and we take the lifts over and go all the way over into Switzerland. It's just a nice big day out. We're not really riding to, shred the trails. I think that's quite a nice aspect that people need to understand, especially about riding in the Alps. I remember the first time we came and rode in the Alps, I was quite intimidated, and Jen was really intimidated about coming here because of, it's big, it's massive.
I just love to explore and discover, and that's, I think, why I fell in love with mountain biking, because it allowed me to get further and kind of push my limits and have fun at the same time. Yeah. And a big day in the Alps, it allows me just to do exactly that, like discover new places, could be new restaurant, new trail, maybe link to destinations that I already know, but then realize, oh wow, they're only one valley apart. Yeah. Like sometimes when you go with a car, it takes you hours, but then when you go by bike, it's like, oh, it's just a 2-hour ride. Yeah. It's just over the hill. And for me, what I love the most about cycling is exploring. Yeah. And racing, of course, that's also something I love, but I would not say it's my biggest love. My biggest love is exploring.
Another thing we touched on before was the difference between downhill mountain biking and enduro racing, and we'll also get onto e-bike racing. Downhill mountain biking has an incredible image. Like I think we said before that maybe it doesn't sell bikes, but it does sell the image of the brand. Do you think that e-bikes have a bit of an identity crisis?
I think e-bikes are just growing up now. I wouldn't call it an identity crisis. Maybe it's a midlife crisis. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like at the moment it's still downhill is creating images, and if a brand is cool or not is decided by marketing mainly, and downhill and cross country as well can help with that.
Yeah.
And I think the images that e-bikes, like even e-bike racing gives, it's not as powerful. So I believe when you buy a bike, you also buy an emotion. You pay a lot of money to buy a bike, and it gives you a certain emotion. So marketing is part of it.
Yeah.
My theory is that brands that only sell e-bikes, they're having quite a hard time because it's hard for them to build up that image and create that emotion.
Yeah. The design of e-bikes as well. I mean, they're getting better now, but before they big chunky down tubes and quite ugly frames, weren't they?
But to be honest, nowadays all bikes are a little bit chunky.
Yeah.
So most enduro bikes and e-bikes, it's really hard to tell them apart.
E-bike hate. That is one thing that I wrote down here. I can't remember what that was in relation to.
I think I said that 5 years back when I started to race e-bikes, I felt like there were a lot of e-bike haters around me, like people that had like this strong opinion about not liking e-bikes and that it's not for them and that it's kind of the devil. But and then what I've seen around here was then we had COVID lockdown, no lift was open, and it turned the opinion of a lot of people around to realize, oh, when the lifts are not open, an e-bike is something that is very convenient.
Yeah.
And it's quite hard to pedal 3,000 vertical meters a day uphill. So e-bike allows you to do all the fun stuff anyway.
Yeah.
And especially like in Switzerland, we were always allowed to go out and ride. And I think I would have not believed before, but it was so fast how it went from e-bike is something for old people to e-bikes is something that is cool.
Yeah.
Like I in my bike bubble, I don't know anybody that is hating e-bikes anymore. Or maybe one person, but
Yeah. I'm just trying to think now if I've got any. I don't think I've got any either.
But I also know some people that tell me, like after the rides, how proud they are that they only used eco mode, and I'm like, well, I go turbo all the way. Why should I ride my e-bike in eco mode? Because then I would have to climb up gravel roads and I would not be able to climb trails anymore. But I think that's another generation of rider than I am.
That's a good point, actually. So lightweight e-bikes is another thing that's coming about now. Have you spent any time on lightweights?
I did. I don't own one because for me it's like I have a lot of endurance and power in my legs. So, and what I love climbing trails.
Yeah.
I need a lot of power to do that. So the way I ride a e-bike, I don't think a light e-bike is for me.
Okay.
But I can see that it's exactly the right bike for a lot of people.
I've actually found that the slightly reduced weight of the bike, you really do learn to enjoy that. And then when I jump back onto a full powered e-bike, all of a sudden it feels heavy again.
Yes, downhill, I can see that a lighter bike is more fun.
Yeah.
But going uphill is just, you lose a bit. You lose quite a bit of the fun that a full power bike gives you.
Yeah. And when it comes to downhill, many people actually disagree with that statement. Many say, the extra weight, it makes you more stable, and especially for jumping as well.
I think that depends where you live and what trails you ride.
Yeah.
If you live somewhere where it's really, really steep, I think you can feel the weight.
I agree.
But if it's more flowy, then no.
The other thing I've noticed is, like in Port du Soleil, I've ridden the e-bike a little bit there, and it's the way the bike handles the braking bumps. A heavier bike sinks into the braking bumps quicker. That's how I've felt. Even at speed, you notice that it dives just that little bit more, and so the fatigue builds up much quicker in my hands. So that's one thing I've noticed with the e-bike.
But a heavier bike is a better workout for your upper body, so you can just look at it as additional training.
Oh my god! Right, my forearms, they've kind of grown again, but I'm getting tennis elbow because my sort of ligaments are not growing with it. So
Maybe you need regular rest days.
I think so, yeah, or just more time in the gym, one or the other. But yes, I need more rest days. That's very true. Okay, I think we've covered most of it, but one thing that I am interested in is to talk about the future of Bosch to as much as you can say. You've been quite heavily involved in development, and I also notice you're using ABS brakes as well on your bike. I don't see ABS brakes around that much. Have they not caught on as much as perhaps Bosch maybe planned on them catching on, or are they just still in that development cycle?
I think you should look at this or the development of ABS just as how it was with e-bikes. It took a while until people realized that it's fun and they actually need one. And it took a while to make e-bikes cool, and it just needs a little bit of time, I think, to get it going.
Okay.
It's fun, and I think latest when an ABS bike won the downhill world champs, we should talk again. Right now it's only on e-bikes. I don't think it's planned actually to bring it on acoustic bikes. That's just something I just said, but I don't see any reason why not. And I think downhill they've always been open to adapt to things that are fast.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it needs more than 5 years, but let's talk again in 10 years.
Yeah.
And as soon as somebody wins a downhill race on an ABS brake, I don't think it's treated anymore as something that it's only for people that don't know how to ride bikes.
Yeah.
Like, let's say even dropper seat posts. When I saw a dropper seat post for the first time, I was like, oh, I don't need that. No. I know how to ride. Or like knee pads even. Like, I'm a cross-country rider. I was like, knee pads, why would I need that? Now, like, especially on my e-bike, I only ride with knee pads because I crashed so many times riding uphill.
Really?
And that I need my knee pads mainly for riding uphill. I think with ABS, that's, like all of this, it comes out of racing. It needs some time. People need to learn that it's actually any use. And then I really believe it will go through the roof.
When we talk in 10 years' time, I can't imagine what e-bikes will be then. Like, do you think all formats will be racing on e-bikes at that point?
No.
No? You still think there'll be an e-bike category and an acoustic category?
Maybe not in all the disciplines, but I think those heroes that have like let's say the heroes of the Tour de France.
Yes.
They will always be on acoustic bikes.
Yeah.
Also because battery capacity is limited and the human body is a little bit less limited. So there's a few things that... but that's just what I believe.
Yeah.
I think there's a place for everything, and e-bikes are fun, and that's why we ride them.
I like that, and I think that's a good place to end. Thank you so much for speaking to me today, and also thank you for riding with me today, because I really enjoyed it. Even though it was raining, I think we still had a great time. Question is, did you win?
Today, I don't know. I need to go to prize giving now. We will find out soon.
Time to go and receive some prizes. Nice to talk to you, Nathalie. And let's talk again. Hopefully not in 10 years' time, but maybe in a year or so, and we'll see where e-bikes are then, and ABS brakes.
Thank you.